on. Do you have your mic on? Get on. Is mine on?
Hey, where y'all from? Is that Arkansas? Thanks for coming down. Hi, Tor. Yes, I can hear you. I hear it. We might not even need to talk. I mean, this thing might be going by then.
Gotta introduce him.
I'm not gonna get in front of the camera. It's not about us. It's about this.
Your mic is hot.
Good afternoon. This is Christian Picos with KSLI News 12 reporting live from First Bossier Church on East Texas Street in Bossier City. My photographer and I just stepped out of the sanctuary where the funeral for fallen Doylean police officer and Webster Parish Sheriff's Deputy Billy Collins Jr. has come to an end. His procession from First Bossier to his final resting place is about to begin. There are very few words to describe how powerful and emotional this service was. I know there was a live stream up from KSLA, so hopefully you had a chance to see it, but we heard from his daughter, from the Doylean police chief, we heard from the Webster Parish Sheriff, and we heard amazing accounts of who Officer Collins was, both as a police officer and also as a father and as a human being, most importantly. Law enforcement has poured into Bossier City from all across the state. I just saw an officer from Arkansas. We're hearing reports that members of the Chicago Police Department are here as well. We also heard reports that members of law enforcement in Suffolk, New York, that's in Long Island, have also traveled all the way to Little Bossier City to pay their final respects to Officer Collins. It was a truly beautiful ceremony. We heard from the Doylean Police Chief that Officer Collins wanted to join the Doylean Police Department simply because he wanted to become closer with members of his community. Truly just so beautiful right there. The village of Doylean, if you don't know, is a population of just over 800 people, an incredibly small town. There are only 3 police officers in Doylean, so the magnitude of this loss hits close to home for every person who lives in that village. We also heard from the pastor of a church in Houghton who described Officer Collins' relationship with God, and they firmly believe that something good will come from his passing. And that gave a lot of people in there solace. Beautiful words of prayer to honor and remember a fallen officer who made the ultimate sacrifice last Friday. At the end of the service, they also had Officer Collins' last call, and without a doubt, that brought every single person in the audience there to tears. Something so heartbreaking about that. It's just hard to put into words, to be completely honest with you. It was hard. I was becoming quite emotional, and I never had the opportunity or pleasure of meeting Officer Collins. Again, he was a Webster Parish Sheriff's Deputy full-time as well. He was with that department for close to 15 years, working as a corrections officer there. So again, we are expecting the procession for Officer Collins to begin momentarily. Law enforcement from all across the state and from the country have lined up to travel from First Bossier Church to Hillcrest Memorial Cemetery. You see a couple of Webster Parish Sheriff's vehicles right here. Members I'm seeing of State Wildlife are here as well, State Police. Essentially every local law enforcement agency in Northwest Louisiana is here. Many, again, from all across the state and across the country to pay their respects to Officer Collins. Truly, there are no words to describe how large of a hole is going to be left in the tiny village of Doylean. I'm going to pause for just a second just to let you hear some of the sights and sounds of where we are right now here at First Bossier Church. It's also just a beautiful day to celebrate the life of Officer Collins. You can see this gorgeous American flag blowing in the wind from the Bossier City Fire Department right there. That's been up all morning, and I know that was up yesterday as well for his visitation. We saw an amazing outpouring of love and support from the community during that sea of blue last night, where officers traveled from First Bossier Church to Hillcrest Memorial Cemetery, all with their lights on, to create this beautiful line of law enforcement to honor Officer Collins' life. And again, we're going to see something similar as they travel eastbound on highway to his final resting place, where we also know a number of ceremonial events will be taking place at his graveside as well. I want to read you a quote that I wrote down from this service. This is coming from the Dorleen Police Chief, Officer Robbie Hayden. He wrote, "Serving the people is what he loved to do. His only desire was to help any way he could. I thank God for the time I had with Billy Collins." Billy was a father, he was a husband, and he was a beloved member of this community, and he is being celebrated to the best right now. The processional is beginning as we speak. Right now, you're witnessing this incredible procession for the life of fallen Doylean police officer in Webster Parish, Sheriff's Deputy Billy Collins Jr. Incredibly special, a beautiful moment right here, seeing all these law enforcement officers coming together to celebrate his life. We're seeing people here from all across Louisiana, Caddo Parish, Sabine Parish, Natchitoches Parish, DeSoto Parish, Webster Parish, as far south as South Louisiana as well. We're hearing reports that folks are coming all the way from Chicago to celebrate his life. Law enforcement officials as far away as Long Island here as well. Right now, the procession is traveling eastbound on Highway 80 towards Hillcrest Memorial Cemetery. That is where he will ultimately be laid to rest. Law enforcement agencies poured into First Bossier for about 90 minutes to hear more about the life of Billy Collins. A lot of these people have never actually met him before, but what they heard were stories of a man who loved his community, who loved his family, and who loved his job. Scott, I want to have you pan back just to show a little bit more of this procession. So you have just been watching the procession as it leaves First Bossier on its way right now from First Bossier Church here on Highway 80 to Hillcrest Memorial Cemetery, where Officer Collins will ultimately be laid to rest. Different fire departments are now passing by. EMS vehicles, ambulances, all passing by right now to pay honor to Officer Collins and the ultimate sacrifice he made. I want to pass it now to my colleague, Chandler Watkins, who is a little bit down the road from where I am right now.
We are at Texas and Industrial watching the procession go by. You see the motor cops starting the procession. They're coming by, and it's, other than the motors, it is very quiet, very somber out here. People who were stopped are getting out of their cars to watch the procession as it goes by. And last night, following the visitation at First Bossier, almost 100 law enforcement units, just like today, took this path. They turned their lights on in the traditional sea of blue procession. One thing we do want to let people know, if you do want to come to this procession, if you are lining the road, there is a traffic advisory. If you do want to pay your respects to Officer Collins, the Webster Parish Sheriff's Office, and the Doyling Police Department, as the procession goes by, traffic will be shut down on both sides of Highway 80. But speaking with the Bossier Parish Sheriff's Office, officers across the country flooded into Bossier Parish yesterday and today to pay their respects to Officer Collins, the former Doyling police officer and former deputy at the Webster Parish Sheriff's Office. Now, some have come in from Dallas, some as far away as Chicago and New York. Meanwhile, the Webster Parish Sheriff's Office and Doyling Police Department have been receiving not just national but international support at this time. Speaking with the Doyling Police Chief Hayden yesterday, he says that Officer Collins, who he just called Billy, wanted to serve his community and keep his community safe, and that he's very proud of his service at the department. Now, community members of the Arklatex, as I said earlier, they're stepping out of their cars to pay their respects as the procession comes by. They came out yesterday as well to watch the Sea of Blue as the procession made its way from First Bossier to Hillcrest Cemetery. Now, as the hearse does come past us, we are going to pay a moment of respect and be quiet. It's obviously a very emotional time for family, friends, and former colleagues of Officer Collins, as well as the communities in Webster Parish and Doyling. As the procession continues to go by, we're just going to pay respects and have a moment of silence. Now, hundreds of law enforcement officers across the Arklatex and beyond have come to show their support to the Webster Parish Sheriff's Office and the Doyling Police Department. We see Lafayette Police down in South Louisiana, Red River Parish, Natchitoches, Bossier, Caddo, officers from Dallas, Chicago, and New York, all coming in to show their support to this community that is mourning at this time. As the procession continues to make its way from First Bossier to the Hillcrest Cemetery, we're going to take it to Adria Goins, who is at Louisiana Downs. Adria.
That's what we had. They took those back from the throne.
Chandler, we are standing outside of Louisiana Downs, where you can see the horse-drawn carriage has just pulled up to the intersection here. They're being directed by Bossier Parish Sheriff's Office. They're coming out onto Highway 80 here, where, as you can see, just down the street from us is the procession. They're making their way this way. This will be where Officer Collins' body is transferred. The casket will then go from the procession onto this horse-drawn carriage, and it will be taken the rest of the way to Hillcrest Cemetery. They are directing traffic now. This casket arriving all the way from Rice, Texas, just outside of Dallas, about an hour or so ago to prepare for this procession. This is something that the vintage carriages they are familiar with. They were the carriages that were used whenever the officers in Dallas and Baton Rouge were carried in that procession 5 years ago. The gentleman you see there with those two horses came all the way from, as we mentioned, Texas, and then we'll be going to Baton Rouge this evening to be part of the 5-year anniversary of the deaths of those officers down in Baton Rouge. I'm going to ask my photographer here quickly to turn back around as the procession is making its way towards us. You can see several of the officers' motorcade approaching our area. We've seen a number of people come and stand on the side of Highway 80 here, saluting, carrying flags, just to show their respects to Officer Collins. Motorcade just passing. Now, many of the sheriff's deputies from Webster Parish are passing by with their blue lights flashing. I've gotten the chance to talk to a couple of deputies who are just encouraged by the outpour of support from our community who's here to honor this fallen officer. It's very somber here as well, very quiet. Many people aren't talking, just waving their flags. They're standing by the side of the road watching what they're seeing. They are incredibly grateful for this time this officer has spent, more than 15 years in a line of duty. Several Webster Parish Sheriff's deputies still passing by. They have incredible support today. We're watching as the last of the Webster Parish Sheriff's deputies are passing by. We are starting to see the hearse surrounded by motorcade, just passing by the I-220 overpass exchange there on East Texas. We're inching closer to us where, as we mentioned, Officer Collins' casket will be transferred into a horse-drawn carriage. Now, this is something I was told that Sheriff Julian Whittington asked for. He has a deputy who works alongside the gentleman at Vintage Carriages and asked, would you give him a call? Would he please be part of this? He canceled his plans and came here from Rice, Texas to be part of this because he knew how important this was to our community and to the family of Officer Collins. The hearse now approaching, passing by Stockwell Road.
Checked everything out.
body of Officer Collins now on that horse-drawn carriage making its way to Hillcrest Cemetery. What an emotional moment. That was incredibly touching. His pallbearers getting out of their vehicle to transfer him from his hearse to that horse-drawn carriage. His family also, you see these vehicles that are passing by right now, that's his family. They also got out from their cars and stepped on the side of the road so they could watch that incredibly touching moment. Many people on the side of the road are just emotional. There's no better way to put it. They are tearful. They are honoring a man who served his community, his dedicated service to his neighbors, who are actually, if you can see just where that horse-drawn carriage, that is a section there that is all Doyline neighbors. They are standing outside on the side of the road paying their respects to their fallen community member. He was not just an officer, he was also a community member as well, a neighbor, a friend, a dad. Now, the horses that you see that are pulling that beautiful horse-drawn carriage, those are actually Percheron horses, which are larger than Clydesdales. The owner of that carriage told me that they're very gentle giants. They're larger than Clydesdales. They do this quite frequently. They've been well trained. He said, unfortunately, we do it more than what we would like. After today, he will also be going for the 5-year anniversary, as I mentioned, to Baton Rouge, where that carriage pulled officers fallen in the line of duty exactly 5 years ago tomorrow. We also saw a Spring Hill EMS that's down there as well, paying their respects. They came all the way from Spring Hill. There's Doyline community that's just past them. We also see a truck that has raised its crane with a flag flying high above the procession as it passes by. Many of the Bossier Parish Sheriff's deputies now passing by as well. We've got Caddo deputies, DeSoto Parish deputies that are going by in the procession at this time. Most of the people on the sides here saluting as Officer Collins passes by. We've seen members of the Bossier City Police, the Game and Fish Commission, as we mentioned, DeSoto Parish Sheriff's Office, Bossier Parish, Webster Parish, Caddo Parish, hundreds of law enforcement here to pay their respects. You can see now the casket is making its way to the top there, on its way to Hillcrest Cemetery, which is not far over that hill. A very long, I would say well over a mile, if not more, procession here that's at a bit of a standstill. Of course, it's not moving near as quickly as it was now that it's on a horse-drawn carriage. It's making its way up the hill right now towards Hillcrest Cemetery. We're now seeing a sheriff's deputy from Columbia County pass by. And one from a Sibley police officer passing by. Louisiana State police officers passing by. Many of the people who are stopped on the side of the roads as this procession is going by, they've gotten out of their cars and they've walked up to the side of the road to also pay their respects. It's a very touching moment. We also have deputies and police officers coming all the way from Texas. We have Kilgore police who are along the procession line right now, a couple of those officers. We have Pleasant Hill police who's also joined in the procession. And folks from the Sheriff's Department in Natchitoches Parish passing by now. It's very quiet, a very somber moment. We're seeing some of the restaurants and hotels that are along this stretch of Highway 80. Many of their employees have come outside and come close to the highway to pay their respects as well. The horse-drawn carriage making its way to the cemetery right now. We're going to send it over to Corey.
Johnson, and right now we're awaiting the hearse before the order of events that are set to take place, which include the Patriot Guard presentation, 21 gun salute, taps, helicopter flyover, and a flag folding presentation, which will be conducted by Barksdale Air Force Base. Just moments ago, the procession arrived here at Hillcrest Cemetery. Many law enforcement officers awaiting Deputy Collins' arrival. Just moments ago, the procession for Deputy Collins has arrived at Hillcrest Cemetery in Bossier Parish. Multiple law enforcement agencies here to show support ahead of the order of events for the ceremony. And again, that ceremony includes a Patriot Guard presentation, 21 gun salute, a helicopter flyover, taps, and a flag folding presentation. That presentation will be conducted by Barksdale Air Force Base. Cars are still rolling in to the cemetery as we speak. I spoke with staff with the funeral home who tell me a private viewing will take place for the family following this graveside service.
Now at this time we're still waiting on the carriage to arrive, but several law enforcement officers as well as community members are still pouring into the cemetery for that ceremony, which will take place momentarily.
We are still here alongside Highway 80 near Louisiana Downs as we can continue to see a number of law enforcement officers still making their way to the cemetery in this procession. We've seen officers from Dallas, Texas make their way through the procession. Officers from Kilgore, Texas, Natchitoches, Red River Parish. We've even seen Bossier Parish Police Jury that's coming by right now. As we mentioned, a lot of these people who are working alongside Highway 80 in these hotels and these restaurants, they've come out of their businesses and stood alongside of the road so they could pay their respects to Officer Collins, who moments ago was transferred from a hearse, his casket, into a horse-drawn carriage. Came all the way from Rice, Texas. Vintage carriages. They've assisted in a number of these processions of fallen officers. In fact, they did so in Dallas and Baton Rouge 5 years ago. The same carriage pulled the same caskets for those officers down in Baton Rouge and Dallas. Richland Parish Sheriff's Office is here as well. A strong show of support from all across the country, all across the Arklatex and the region and beyond. Right now, they are going past, you're getting a look at the procession going past the community of Doyline, a group of community members from Doyline, which was where the officer was a part-time officer there. He was killed in Doyline. Many of the community members I spoke to, they shared with me some stories of Officer Collins. In fact, I spoke with a basketball coach at Doyline who said he had just seen Officer Collins a couple of weeks ago, spoke with him. Their daughter, his daughter, and Officer Collins' daughter, they're very close friends. This has been very difficult for that village and that community, a very strong network community. We've got Houghton police coming by. Another motorcade coming through. You can see a large group of motorcycles just now going by. We are nearing the end of the procession, but as you can imagine, just incredible. Well over a mile and a half long of people showing their respects to Officer Collins. We've got Shreveport Fire Department who's coming up as well, EMS there as well. We're now going to go to Hillcrest Cemetery with Corey.
Adria, the carriage has just arrived here at Hillcrest Cemetery in Bossier Parish. As you can see, multiple law enforcement agencies still trickling in, ready to show their support, including Bossier County Sheriff's Office, Louisiana State Police, as well as the DeSoto Sheriff's Office as well.
change batteries, and most times it doesn't stop the feed, but it started. Matter of fact, just turn it on. Yes. Yes. on. Up on it. Hey. Ready. Hey. Five. Ready. Hey. Five. Ready. Hey. Five. Exhale. Six. Breathe, man. 4. 2 shots over there first. After that, we got it straight.
Guys, you're waiting for the helo. Okay? Get down. Get down.
All right, well, that concludes our live streaming of the graveside service for Deputy Billy Collins Jr. Following this ceremony, there's going to be a private ceremony for the family. And out of respect, we're going to end our live streaming at this time.